Hello and welcome to another session of UPSC Mains PYQ series by Shikara Academy. In this series, we are discussing all the GS Mains questions, GS1, GS2, GS3 questions asked by UPSC over the past few years. Okay. In today's session, we will be discussing the 2023 GS Paper 3, starting from question number 11 to question number 15. Starting with the first question of the day, most of the unemployment in India is structural in nature. So this is an introductory statement. Examine the methodology adopted to compute unemployment in the country and suggest improvements. Okay, a 15-mark question that we have to answer in 250 words. So the question is asking us three things. We have to examine which methodology is being used, okay, and examine whether what are the limitations of it and suggest improvements to it. Okay, when the word examine comes, when the keyword here is examine, so in examine give we have to write about the present methodology that is being used and also have to evaluate it, like what are the limitations that are to it, to the methodology, and then we have to write the recommendations. Okay, a 15-mark question we have to answer in 250 words. Now this is the introductory statement and we will be dealing with the introductory statement in the introduction of the answer. Mapping it with the syllabus, we can see that it has been asked from the subject of economic or economic development, and the topic is Indian economy and issues related to employment, because it is talking about unemployment. So the approach that we'll be taking in answering such a question is that in introduction, we describe unemployment in India, okay, and we'll also deal with the introductory statement that was given in the question. Then in body, we address the demand of the question by writing the methodology of computing unemployment in India, the limitations of this current methodology, and the suggested improvements. Then, in conclusion, we will be summarizing the answer and write a way forward. Moving with the introduction, starting with the introduction. Unemployment in India is predominantly structural, arising from a mismatch between skills and job opportunities. Now, in this introductory statement, now with this introduction, we have dealt with the introductory statement that was given in the question that was talking about unemployment being structural in India. Okay. Now, then measuring unemployment accurately is crucial for effective policy design. Various methodologies are used in India, but each has limitations in capturing the complexity of this underemployment, disguised unemployment, and informal sector realities. Because uh, many of the employment opportunities in India are in the informal sector or in the unorganized sector. Okay, and there has been cases of underemployment because the people, they are overqualified, okay, and but are not able to find jobs that match their educational or skills level. Okay, then there is disguised unemployment, especially observed in the case of agriculture sector. Now, starting with the body. So the methodology of computing unemployment in India, we have the periodic labor force survey, which was earlier conducted by the National Sample Survey Office, or the NSSO, is the main source of data. And this periodic labor force survey, it adopts three approach. Okay, it adopts three approaches are adopted by this PLFS in order to survey or in order to get the data, unemployment data in the country. First is the usual status. It considers the activity status over the past 365 days or 1 year. And this captures the chronic unemployment in the country. Then there are current weekly status, which considers activity during the preceding 7 days, that is weekly, in the past week. It accounts for the intermittent work and the weekly fluctuations that are there in the overall in the employment sector in the uh, economy. Then there are current daily status. Okay, first yearly, then weekly, then daily. It considers activity on each day of the preceding week. Okay, so if today is Friday, so it will take the previous Friday the into consideration. Okay, the previous week's Friday into consideration, and this best reflects the underemployment and the disguised unemployment. Additionally, also, the employment unemployment surveys, the census data, and the CMIE household surveys supplement the estimates of the periodic labor force survey. Now, what are the limitations of this current methodology? We have to examine the limitations in the methodology. So first is the underrepresentation of the informal sector. Okay, informal sector employs over 80% of India's workforce, and this informal sector, the unorganized sector, which employs the majority of the population, the 80% of the population, it gets underrepresented in this unemployment estimation. Then there is time lag in the data collection and reporting, the PLFS. And there is an inadequate reflection of disguised and seasonal unemployment in agriculture. In particularly agriculture, there are seasonal unemployment because agriculture is seasonal, and there's also disguised unemployment, which is hard to detect, or also it is also inadequate reflected in these surveys. Then there are limited insights into skill job mismatch. Okay, one of the biggest reason of unemployment in the country is the skill job mismatch. Okay, the skills that are required in the job, the population, the majority of population do not possess such skills that will provide them with a job. Okay, and the emerging gig economy trends. Okay, especially in the urban areas, also the gig economy is taking shape. So the PLF survey or these unemployment surveys, they give limited insights to this skill job mismatch and the gig economy trends that are emerging in the economy. Then suggested improvements. We have to adopt a real-time digital surveys integrated with Aadhaar and labor registries. Okay. Then is the better coverage of informal gig and the platform-based employment. Incorporation of skill mismatch indicators along with the employment status. So we have to track along with this employment status. We have to track this skill or job mismatch indicators along with the employment status. Then there are higher frequency surveys with district level granularity, okay, and use of big data and AI analytics for the dynamic labor market insights. Okay, so these are some of the recommendations of improvements, suggested improvements to improve the PLFS or the unemployment service in the country. Then in conclusion, we can summarize the answer by writing, while India's existing methodologies provide a broad picture, they fail to capture the nuanced realities and structural unemployment. That's the reality. So a modern, technology-driven and inclusive data collection system is essential to design targeted skilling programs, promote employability, and ensure the equitable growth. Okay, so this is the way forward. Moving on to the next question, that is question number 12. Distinguish between care economy and monetized economy. How can care economy be brought into the monetized economy through women empowerment? Okay, 15-mark question that we have to answer in 250 words. Now, mapping it with the syllabus, we can see that it has been asked from the subject of economic development or the Indian economy, and that is Indian economy and issues related to planning, mobilization, resources, growth, development, and employment. So we have to distinguish between care economy. We have to distinguish between a care economy and a monetized economy, and also applied part two is the part of the question is that we have to answer that how the care economy can be brought into the monetized economy. Okay, how the care economy, how we can incorporate the care economy into the monetized economy through women empowerment. So the approach that we'll be taking in answering such a question is that in introduction, because the question is talking about care economy and the monetized economy, and there is no introductory statement that was given in the question. So in the introduction, we will be writing, we will describe the care economy and the monetized economy. Then in the body of the answer, we will write the distinction between the care economy and the monetized economy because that was the main thing that was asked in the question. Then we have to answer by bringing the care economy into the monetized economy through women empowerment. This is the second part of the answer. Then in conclusion, we will be summarizing the answer. So starting with the introduction, the economy is not limited to market-based exchanges. Okay. So the entire economy of any country or of the global economy, it is not limited to the market-based exchanges. Okay. A large part of the productive work, especially the caregiving work, it remains unpaid and invisible in traditional economic accounts. Okay, so the work that the homemakers or the female homemakers or or the wives, the mothers, okay, the females of the family, they do the caregiving work. So that is often unpaid and is invisible in the traditional economic account, okay, in the traditional economic setup. Now, distinguishing between the care economy and the monetized economy highlights this gap and shows how women empowerment can bridge it. So now this is the connecting line. Okay, through this connecting line, we connect the introduction of the answer with the body of the answer. So starting with the distinction between the care economy and monetized economy. So care economy involves unpaid or underpaid activities such as childcare, elder care, cooking, and household management. Okay, and it predominantly is carried out by women within the households. And it is often excluded from GDP calculations despite the contribution to the overall social well-being of the society and the country. Okay. The monetized economy, on the other hand, it involves the activities that are exchanged for money in the market. So services or the activities that are sold in the market or that are exchanged in the market for money. So that constitutes the monetized economy. It includes wage labor, the business, and the formal employment, also the informal employment. Then there are these directly contribute to GDP and is recognized as in the economic policy making. So the economic, because these are included in the GDP, in calculation of the GDP, the monetized economy, the aspects of the monetized economy are included directly, they contribute directly to the GDP, therefore they are recognized in the economic policy making. And hence the care economy, it is often excluded from the GDP. Okay, it is not considered while calculating the GDP. So the economic policy making also does not recognize or it doesn't give much uh, importance to the care economy. Okay. Then how the bringing care economy into like how can we achieve by bringing this care economy into the monetized economy through women empowerment. So we, if we empower the women, okay, if we provide education, skills, and healthcare facilities to the women, okay, how then we can transform this care economy into the, or we can bring this care economy into monetized economy. So first is skill recognition and training. We have to provide formal training in caregiving, nursing, and early childhood education, and recognize care skills as employable skills. Okay, first thing. Then there is formalization of care work. There should be an expansion of paid care services like the daycare centers, the elderly care homes, and inclusion of domestic workers under labor laws and security. Very important. Right? Then there should be entrepreneur opportunities. We have to promote women-led enterprises in the field of health, nutrition, and child services or the caregiving services also. Okay, so women should have entrepreneurship opportunities. Okay, in the caregiving sector. Then we have to support women through credit, subsidies, and digital platforms. So these enterprises of women in the care economy or in the care sector, these should be supported. Uh, they should be fully supported through credit, through subsidies, and through by providing the digital platforms. Then there are policy interventions. We have to introduce the care credits and recognize the unpaid care in the national accounts, and strengthen the maternity benefits, the paternity leave, and the universal childcare facilities. Also, the changing social attitudes. The campaigns to value unpaid work as productive, and we have to encourage men to share care responsibilities, freeing women for economic participation. So, in conclusion, we can summarize the answer by writing the care economy sustains families and society. Okay, this is the significance of the care economy. Yet, it remains undervalued. By empowering women through skill development, by through policy support and recognition of the unpaid care, India can integrate the care economy into the monetized economy, and this is also the need of the hour. And this not only enhances the gender equality, but it also strengthens the overall inclusive or contributes to the inclusive and sustainable growth of the country. Moving on to the next question, that is question number 13. Explain the changes in cropping pattern in India in the context of changes in the consumption pattern and marketing condition. A 15-mark question that we have to answer in 250 words. Now, mapping it with the syllabus, we can see that it has been asked from the subject of agriculture or economic development. Agriculture is a part of that. And the topic is major crops and cropping pattern in various parts of the country. We have to talk about how the cropping pattern in the country is changing because the consumption pattern and the marketing conditions in the country are changing. Okay. What is the impact of this consumption pattern and the marketing conditions on the cropping pattern in the country? That is the main question. So seeing the approach. So in introduction, we describe cropping pattern in the country. And in body, we address the demand of question by writing the impact of consumption pattern on cropping and the influence of marketing conditions on cropping pattern. Also, in conclusion, we will be summarizing the answer and write a way forward regarding the cropping pattern. So starting with the introduction, the cropping pattern refers to the proportion of area under different crops at a point of time and how it changes over space and in India, cropping patterns have undergone significant shifts. Okay, so it's not like that cropping patterns are have not gone any has not gone any shifts, or they have not witnessed any shift or any changes. Okay, they have witnessed or they have undergone significant shifts due to socio-economic, technological, and environmental factors. Okay, but recently, so that was in the past. So socio-economically, technologically, and environmental factors they contributed in changing the cropping patterns in the country. But in the recent years or in the recent decades, the change in the consumption pattern and the marketing conditions have also influenced the cropping patterns in the country or the cropping pattern in the country. So now discussing the impact of consumption pattern on cropping. The first is a shift towards high value crops. So the rising income and urbanization and changing food habits in the population have reduced the dependence on cereals and increased demands for fruits, vegetables, milk, meat, and oilseeds. Okay, so a few decades back, the consumption pattern was more inclined towards these food grains. Okay, we the first target for the agriculture sector in the country was to become self-sufficient or self-reliant in the food grain or in the cereals. Okay, the wheat, rice, pulses, lentils, etc. But like after 1991 reforms, when the economy it started to expand, okay, it started to grow. There was rapid urbanization along with increased income for the middle class. Okay, so their consumption patterns also changed. Okay, now the middle class or the population is more inclined towards consuming fruits, vegetables, milk, meat, and oilseeds. That is, they are trying to diversify and they are trying to take a balanced diet. Okay, then decline in core cereals. So traditional crops like the jowar, bajra, and ragi have lost acreage as dietary preferences lean toward rice, wheat, and processed food. Okay, because the wheat and rice they are also used in the processed food. Therefore, the traditional crops like the millets, jowar, bajra, ragi, so they have lost the acreage. But in the past couple of years, there have been a push from the government, okay, and also from the aware citizens, citizens who are aware towards uh, increasing the demand or increasing the production of the millets in the country. Okay. Then there is growth in horticulture. So there has been a demand for nutrition-rich and perishable food items as encouraged toward diversification towards fruits, vegetables, floriculture, and spices. Then there is rise in protein-based demand. Increased consumption of pulses, soybeans, and livestock feed has influenced farmers' crop choices. Okay. Now, what was the influence of marketing conditions on economy? Okay. So first is the assured procurement. Okay. So government it provides it supports through the MSP, the minimum support price, and the procurement policies have favored the rice and wheat cultivation, particularly in the areas in which through which the Green Revolution was first started. Okay, in state of Punjab, Haryana, and Western Uttar Pradesh. So there, the farmers they are more inclined towards growing wheat and rice. Okay, because they get incentives. They are assured of the procurement that their crops will be procured at a fixed MSP price. Okay, so they do not try to diversify from those crops. Then there are export opportunities. The liberalization and globalization after the 1990s have promoted cash crops like cotton, sugarcane, and basmati rice, and which has influenced by the international demand. So the international demand, the consumption abroad also, it has and it leads to the the export opportunities. So international demand leads to export opportunities, but in the external markets there has been a demand for cotton because it is used in the textile industry, the sugarcane for the sugar industry, and also the subsequent processed foods. The sugar is the main constituent, and the basmati rice. Then contract farming and private retail. There has been an entry of agribusiness firms and food processing industries has encouraged in cultivation of vegetables, fruits, and poultry feed crops under assured marketing agreement arrangements. So these agribusiness firms, the large food processing industries or the factories, they enter into a contract with the farmer, okay, and they assure farmer of the price that they will be paying for their crop. Okay, they enter into an agreement with the farmer, a contract with the farmer. So farmer then grows the crops that are required by that particular food processing industry or that particular food processing unit. Then there has been infrastructure and logistics. So better cold storage, transportation, and processing facilities have made high value perishable crops more viable. Okay, so earlier, because there was lack of transportation opportunities, lack of processing facilities, as well as the lack of cold storage. Okay, so the perishable items like the fruits and the vegetables, they used to spoil very soon. But with the advancement or with better cold storage as well as transportation and processing facilities, now the life of these perishable crops can also be extended. So in conclusion, we can write the cropping pattern in India has moved beyond the subsistence oriented food grains, okay, to more market responsive and demand driven crops. While consumer preferences and modern marketing systems have driven diversification, over dependence on water intensive crops due to MSP policies remain a challenge. A sustainable cropping pattern requires balancing food security, farmers' income, and ecological sustainability. Now, this is the way forward. Okay. Moving on to the next question, that is question number 14. What are the direct and indirect subsidies provided to farm sector in India? Discuss the issues raised by the World Trade Organization in relation to the agriculture subsidies in India. Okay. A 15-mark question that we have to answer in 250 words. Now, mapping it with the syllabus, we can see that it has been asked from the subject of economic development and in which agriculture is there. And the topic is issues related to direct and indirect farm subsidies. Now, the approach that we'll be taking in answering such a question is that in introduction, we describe agricultural subsidies because the question is talking about the direct subsidies, the indirect subsidies, and the issues that are there with the agricultural subsidies. So we have to define, we have to describe what are actually agricultural subsidies. Then in the body of the question, we address the demand of the body of the answer, we address the demand of the question by writing about direct subsidies, about indirect subsidies, and the World Trade Organization issues on agriculture subsidies. Then in conclusion, we will summarize the answer and write a way forward. Now, starting with the introduction, agriculture subsidies are government interventions aimed at supporting farmers' income. Okay, so these are government interventions. And what they aim? They aim to support farmers' income, reduce the input cost for the farmers, and ensuring a food security in the country, ensuring food security in the country. In India, subsidies are provided through both direct support measures as well as indirect incentives, forming a major part of the agriculture policy. So, India's agriculture policy is inclined more towards the providing subsidies, okay, giving subsidies, the direct support or the indirect support in the direct subsidies or indirect subsidies. Starting with the direct subsidies. So, first is the fertilizer subsidies. Government provides fertilizers at below market prices and which form the largest share of farm subsidies. Okay. So the fertilizers like the urea, muriate of potash, and the diammonium phosphate, these three are the chemical fertilizers on which the government provides subsidy, and these are made available to the farmers at below market prices. Then there is food subsidy via MSP and PDS, the minimum support price and the public distribution system. Farmers receive minimum support price for major crops and food, the food that is procured through this MSP, the major crops, These are then distributed through the public distribution system. Then there are cash transfer schemes like the PM Kisan provide direct income support to farmers. Okay, so rupees 6,000 annually, uh, three installments of rupees 2,000 are directly transferred into the farmer's bank account by the central government. Then there is crop insurance subsidy. Premiums under the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana are also heavily subsidized. So the premiums that the farmers they have to pay in order to insure their crops, okay, that premium is also heavily subsidized by the central government. Then the indirect subsidies. Okay, so the direct subsidies provide direct monetary benefits. The indirect subsidies include the power subsidy, free or cheap electricity for irrigation. Okay. Then there is irrigation subsidy. Canal water is supplied at very nominal rates. Okay, so power is supplied at nominal rate, the or like free or at a very cheap rate. Also, the irrigation with irrigation subsidy, the canal water is also supplied at very nominal rates. Then there is credit subsidy. Interest subvention schemes provide cheaper institutional credit. So now, if the farmer or the if he or she needs credit, okay, so this interest subvention scheme also provides the credit or the institutional credit at cheaper rates. Okay. Then there is input subsidy, subsidized seeds. Seeds are subsidized, pesticides are subsidized, the machinery is also subsidized. The machinery that is involved in the agriculture. So these are subsidized through state support. Then there is infrastructure support. There is cold storage, warehousing, transportation facilities are all provided at subsidized rates. So that is, these are covered under the indirect subsidies. Now, what was the issue? What was WTO's issue regarding these agriculture subsidies? So first is the trade distortion. So WTO categorizes subsidies into amber box, blue box, or green box subsidies. Okay, so there are three categories or three types in which the WTO classifies or categorizes the subsidies. That is amber, blue, and green boxes. So India's price support, that is MSP, and the input subsidies often fall in the amber box, which are seen trade distorting. So the green box subsidies are allowed, okay, but these amber box subsidies, these are not allowed. These are trade distorting, and the WTO does not allow for these trade distorting subsidies. Then there is 10% de minimis limit. WTO rules restrict the farm subsidies to 10% of the value of the agriculture production, and India is often accused of breaching this limit. Okay, so if India is providing all the subsidies, the direct subsidies and all the indirect subsidies, subsidies on import, subsidies on procurement, and everything, so this is bound to cross the 10% mark. Then public stockholding or issue, that is PSH issue. India's procurement of rice and wheat at MSP is contested as it allegedly depresses the global prices. Okay, because our government procures at a fixed price. Okay, so it can have detrimental impact on the global prices of certain food or food grains or the crops, food crops. Then there is developed versus developing debate. India argues that subsidies are essential for food security because India is a developing country. So we argue that the subsidies that are provided in the agriculture, these agriculture subsidies are essential for our food security and livelihood support to the farmers. Okay, while the developed nations, particularly the United States, the US, okay, it demands reduction. Okay, so it is the US which keeps on dragging India into the WTO regarding these agricultural subsidies. So, in conclusion, we can write the summary. We can summarize the answer. The agriculture subsidies remain vital for ensuring food security, stabilizing farm income, and promoting inclusive growth in India. However, balancing domestic needs with WTO commitments is a continuing challenge. Reforming subsidies towards efficiency and sustainability will be key for future compliance and farmers' welfare. So, this is the summary and a way forward. Moving on to the final question of the day, that is question number 15. The adoption of electric vehicles is rapidly growing worldwide. Now, this is the introductory statement. Okay, nothing has been asked till now. How do electric vehicles contribute to reducing carbon emissions, and what are the key benefits they offer compared to the traditional combustion engine vehicles? Okay, a 15-mark question that we have to answer in 250 words. So this question is on electric vehicles. Okay, and it is an applied part because it involves both science as well as environment. Okay, so uh, mapping it with the syllabus, it is coming from both science. It is an overlap of both science as well as environment, and the topic is developments and their applications in every and effects in everyday life, like development of the electric vehicle and how their development and their deployment is affecting the everyday life and the ecosystem of the environment. So, looking at the approach of this question, so in introduction, we deal with the introductory line and we'll connect it with the body. Okay, then in body of the answer, we will address the demand of question by writing the contribution of electric vehicles in reducing the carbon emissions. Okay, and the key benefits of the electric vehicles over the traditional vehicles, that is combustion vehicles, internal combustion engine vehicles. Okay, ICE vehicles. Then in conclusion, we have to summarize the answer. Now, starting with the introduction, the transport sector is one of the largest contributors of global greenhouse gas emissions, primarily through due to the use of fossil fuels and the internal combustion engine vehicles. Okay, with growing environmental concerns, electric vehicles (EVs) are being adopted worldwide as cleaner and more sustainable alternative to the ICE engines. Okay, or in the traditional fuel engines. Now, the contribution of these electric vehicles in reducing the carbon emissions. Okay. So first is zero tailpipe emissions. So EVs operate on electricity and they produce no direct exhaust emissions. So they do not even have the silencer or the uh, tailgate through which the emissions, the uh, gaseous emissions, uh, they move out. Okay. So unlike ICE vehicles which emit carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and particulate matter, okay, there is no tailpipe. There is no tailpipe emissions means there is no tailpipe in these electric vehicles. Okay, so there is no none of the emissions of this carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is not emitted. The other greenhouse gases are not emitted. Nitrogen oxides are not emitted. Then there is efficient energy use. EVs convert over 60% of the electrical energy into the vehicle movement compared to 20 to 30% efficiency of the combustion engine. So they have a very high efficiency as well. Okay. So the electrical energy is converted into the kinetic energy for the vehicle's movement, and that ratio is around 60%. But when we compare to the traditional combustion engine, that conversion efficiency, okay, that comes down to around 20 to 30%. So it is 2 times or 3 times more efficient in energy use. Then there is potential for renewable integration. When powered by solar, wind, and hydroelectric energy. So if we are producing the power or the electricity through solar, wind, and hydroelectric sources, the EVs can significantly reduce the life cycle carbon emissions. Okay. Now, if the electricity is produced by the coal, by the thermal power plants, okay, which burn coal, so the overall uh, credentials of the electric vehicles comes down because emissions are still there. But if we integrate the renewable energy sources, the electricity that is produced from the renewable energy sources with the electric vehicles, okay, so this reduces the overall life cycle carbon emissions of that particular vehicle. Then there is lower urban pollution. Okay, reduction in the vehicular smoke because the smoke will not come out of the vehicle. Okay, this will help in improving the air quality in densely populated cities, and I don't have to tell you much about how pathetic the situation is, or the situation becomes in the especially in the winter months. Okay, so it's not like the healthy range for the AQI should be less than 100, or the WHO prescribes it even less than 50. But in India, in majority of the cities, okay, on normal days also, okay, this AQI level hardly goes below 150. And it hits the severe or hazardous mark after this October, in the months of October, November, after the Kharif season, um, and also the during the Deepavali. Okay, so this extreme air pollution, to a certain extent, it can be improved by the air quality in the cities can be improved using the, if more and more vehicles they become elect or if more people adopt the electric vehicles. Then there are key benefits over traditional vehicles. Okay. So key benefits of electric vehicles over the traditional vehicles, starting with the economic benefits. So the lower it, the first major advantage is the lower running cost. But the upfront cost of electric vehicles is higher than the uh, traditional vehicles, but the running cost is very less. Okay, the running cost is hardly 1 to 2 rupees, 1 or 2 per kilometer. Okay, due to cheaper electricity compared to petrol and diesel, and because petrol and diesel they are heavily taxed as well. Okay, then there is maintenance advantage. In a traditional ICE engine, there are very, it's very complex. It's very complicated. The uh, electric vehicles, on the other hand, they have fewer moving parts. That is, they just have mainly they have the batteries and the motor. Okay, so this reduces the wear and tear, and which leads to lower maintenance cost for the customer or the user. Then there is energy security. It reduces dependence on imported oil, strengthening the national energy independence. So India have to import around 90% of its daily crude oil requirement. Okay, so if the vehicles now become electric, okay, so that imported oil bill will also come down. Okay, then there is technological advancement. There should be integration of smart features, regenerative braking, and digital connectivity enhances the overall efficiency of these electric vehicles. And there are health and environmental gains. The reduced air and noise pollution, because these electric vehicles they also do not produce any noise. Okay, so the reduced air and noise pollution positively impacts the public health and the urban living, particularly the urban living. So in conclusion, we can summarize the answer by writing the electric vehicles represent a transformative shift in our mobility, offering both environmental as well as socio-economic advantages. So it has both environmental advantages as well as social economic advantages over the traditional ICE vehicles. While challenges such as charging infrastructure, so the biggest hurdle or the biggest challenge is the charging infrastructure and the battery disposable, like where to dispose of the uh, used batteries. Okay, but the EV adoption is crucial pathway to achieving the carbon neutrality, sustainable cities, and overall global climate goals. Okay. The PDF of these model answers will be available to you on Shikara Academy's Telegram channel.